Going on, everybody? It's RPG Zeke here, coming at you with another video of Sleeve This, where I give you a deck list to potentially sleeve so you can try to enjoy the game just a little bit faster. And here we go. This deck list is going to be the last one covered with the boys over at Main Deck Masters. This one's coming to us courtesy of Marshall, aka the Captain, and he gave me literally a pile of cards, but somehow this thing works, and I don't understand it, but that's why we're going to go through it together and hopefully discover the secrets one by one. So it's literally called Pile V2. I had this list for a while sent from him, and I obviously reviewed the other deck list from some of the other Main Deck Master guys, and this one's interesting, but somehow it flows and it works pretty well. So we're going to go through it and kind of talk it out so we get an understanding of what this is trying to do or what we're looking for, and hopefully we have fun with it. So what's our ratios here over at bssdb.dev, the place we use to build these deck lists and show them off to friends and family. We've got 23 spirits, 10 nexuses, 17 magics. Starting from ascending order here, we're going to start with the low-cost Minoctopus. This guy's a 3-cost. He's part of the promo set that came out for this box set for BSS05. This guy's all about controlling the opponent early game. So if your opponent uses a magic card from their hand, place a core from the void into your reserve after the effect resolves. Chain red, so if you have a red symbol on board, he will also cleave or kill a unit of 3,000 BP or fewer and destroy it. So let's say you have him out. Let's say the opponent wants to use a draw early. They want a strong draw. They want a Star Bless draw. Very typical turn 1, turn 2 play. If Minoctopus is out, you're going to be able to ramp a core off that interaction. If you already have a red symbol out by the time they decide to do that, you're also going to cleave low-hanging spirits on the BP threshold, which is really cool. So this guy's a fun addition to the blue-red family. Then we've got Clonetta. When summoned, she'll kill one of your Nexuses to draw 2 cards. This deck usually doesn't have an issue, especially with Clonetta in here, being able to keep your hand size full, at least to a decent amount, so Clonetta's in there to support that situation. Then we've got Deepwalker. His utility in here is 2 things. If we ascend on top of him, so we drop another spirit in place of him and use the ascend tactic, we're able to take a blue Nexus from trash and place it without paying its cost. You're going to see we're going to have quite a few options of that available to us, so we'll go through that momentarily. Then you may exhaust this spirit, or excuse me, you may, if this guy blocks, his other thing is that he will help you ramp. So if he blocks, you're able to exhaust one of your Nexuses and then place a core from the void onto it. Not really using it for that. If it does come up, that's great, but it's not the primary function. Primary function is using it as a body until you're able to ascend on top, then fish a Nexus over from the trash to your board state, which is going to be really helpful for the Ascend Spirit when we talk about him here in just a little bit. Next up, one of my favorite cards of this box set is going to be Calvin Kale. This guy has Gale 2, so if he is blocked while attacking, you will exhaust 2 other spirits since he is Gale 2. That's what that means for being blocked. So if anybody tries to stand in his way, you're exhausting a wider board state because of that. Then when he's attacking level 2 and level 3, level 2, he's able to ramp onto the Nexus that gets exhausted. Level 3, if he sees a Nexus get exhausted, then he will kill a 4-cost or lower and destroy it. Calvin Kill will eat a lot of early games if you're able to establish him and keep him on the board. So if individuals are playing low-hanging spirits, swinging with Calvin Kill, getting the ramp, and then also taking a unit away is also really, really helpful. So Calvin Kill is an awesome card from this box set. Next up, we have one actually from one of the lore box sets that came out sometime last year. This is Wind Aegis General Tokiwa. His whole thing is to make sure you have a spirit in hand. If he goes to the trash, you can spend the soul core during the opponent's end step to get the card back in hand. So if the opponent passes turn, they're ending. If you have the soul core in play, pay it, pull him from the trash, take him to hand, get ready to use him again. You're going to see that the Gale units are going to come back once we start talking about a Nexus in here. And so they're going to be very important, especially Tokuwa here. Next up, we've got Caldera. When I was looking at this deck list from Marshall, aka the Captain, I was like, okay, why is he in here? There could be a couple of different ways Marshall plays him. I didn't actually see Marshall sling cards with this. So he can be used for Nexus recovery. So when summoned, you discard a card from hand, you take Nexuses from the trash and play them. And you play up to a cost of 6. So if you have like 4 Nexuses that cost 2, you can play 3 of those 4 if they just happen to be in your trash. I've done that turn quite a few times using Ruby Sanctuary, which is a different Nexus not found in this deck list. But Caldera is awesome for Nexus utility. And then also level 2, if he swings, he's able to burst or kill a 3-cost unit or fewer. So he's reaching a little bit lower than Cavankale, which Cavankale will pop a 4-cost. Caldera will still help out a little bit, cleaving a 3-cost, especially now that we have more tokens currently in play than we've probably ever had in BSS. And then more token families. And then we've got a new token family coming out in BSS 06. So things like that are probably going to come up and be really helpful at a later time for these things that are attacking costs versus BP thresholds. And then one of my favorite abilities Caldera can do at level 3, he can destroy a Nexus to refresh himself. And it has to be a refresh Nexus, so if you do have a Nexus that's exhausted from getting one of those core ramp interactions, it's not going to be up for Caldera to actually eat one of those to be able to stand back up. So that is something to keep in mind whenever you're slinging Caldera to the board and trying to end game or do something to that effect. Our Ascend Spirit, the guy that will utilize Deep Walker, the guy that will utilize all the 4-cost or higher spirits. He can ascend on a cost 4 or more. He's got Gale 3. Like I said, if he's swinging, which he has 2 symbols, if he connects, you're hitting your opponent for 2 life, which is awesome. It'll help close out the game. But he's got a very cheeky interaction at his level 2 and level 3. Select any number of your Nexuses with cores on them. Treat them as if they are a Golem Spirit with 5,000 BP. And then just go to town. So he swings, he brings the whole party with him. That's why we're so Nexus heavy in this deck and why we have 10. Because if we swing with so many Nexuses that the opponent wasn't able to deal with or get out of our possession, and we finally swing with Forest Golem, that's a big threat. Even if you lose Nexuses, Caldera Recovery will happen a turn, or potentially you ascend next time on Deep Walker, you pull another Nexus out from trash. You can do a lot with the Forest Golem for just shutting down the game. Pressure from him coming out early, coming in later in the game. It doesn't matter. If he shows up at any point, it's to be respected because 5,000 BP is already an annoying threshold to pop. There's a lot of things that can't pop specifically that threshold all at once. And then usually things have a total, meaning that you can add up to a certain amount. Once you get to that cap, you can't kill any more things. So it's also a very interesting interaction. And because the Nexuses cost anywhere from 3 to 4 to 5, as you're going to find out here in a second, if the opponent has a Coven Kill, if they have other things that could usually go for your Nexuses, if they become spirits that turn, they're only grabbing one thing at a time. It's still units they have to try and chew through. So Forest Golem's really interesting for that interaction. So that is it for the spirits. It's all very much on a curve. You're trying to get Monoctopus, you're trying to get Kleinetta, Deep Walker, whatever you can out early. You're trying to establish hold dominance with Coven Kale. You're trying to loop Tokiwa from attacking, blocking into the trash, coming back to hand. Keep in mind, you can only do this for one at a time. So if you spend the Soul Core, it's not like you get all 3 Tokiwa, which is the quantity in this deck list. You're only going to get back 1. So just keep that in mind. The next thing, Nexuses, the 10. This one was an interesting one, but I get what they're going for. Erupting Submarine Volcano. When destroyed, select one of your Nexus cards that costs 4 or more from your trash, return it to your hand. Like I said before, Caldera will pop your own Nexuses. So if for some reason you're getting Nexus controlled pretty early, you can establish one of these, get Caldera out, swing, have Caldera eat it, pull one of your more useful Nexuses to hand, or if you turn this into a spirit and you throw it at your opponent and your opponent blocks for a bigger unit, it dies, then you're still able to loop and get that Nexus from the trash back to your hand. So that's really cool. The second effect I don't believe we're really using it for, which is one of your Aberration Spirits. When it destroys one of your opponent's spirits, discard the top 3 of their deck. Aberrations that we have here, it's going to be Deep Walker and it's going to be Monoctopus. They're not really reaching up and killing a whole bunch. At least not in my usage with them. I would be really surprised if he was ramping up one of these to actually do that effect. But, if it does happen, so be it. You get an extra interaction for having the 2 cores on Erupting Submarine Volcano. Moving on to the next Nexus, probably the heart, the beating soul of this entire deck list, is Hurricane Highlands. This card is so good. If you play Green Gale whatsoever, it's like a necessity that you have 4 copies of this in a deck. During the main step, when you summon a spirit with Gale, place a number of cores from the void onto that spirit equal to the number specified on its Gale effect. So when we look at Coven Kale, it's got Gale 2. When we look at Tokiwa, it's level 2, it's got Gale 2. If you're able to summon these and get them to the appropriate level, Coven Kale level 1, Tokiwa level 2, you will ramp 2 cores for summoning them in those Gale windows. So that's pretty interesting. So, like I was saying before, you use Tokiwa to whatever extent you need to, let him die, pay the soul core, keep your soul core in play best you can, loop Tokiwa back to hand. Then during your main step, you play Tokiwa again, you ramp even more. So your core utility and getting cores to play will get out of hand really quick, and it does stack per Nexus. So if you happen to have 2 Hurricane Highlands, you're going to ramp 4 for Coven Kill. You're going to ramp 4 for Tokiwa. If you have 3, again, 2 times 3, we're looking at 6 for Coven Kill, 6 again for Toki. So the more of these you have on board and your opponent doesn't have an answer, doesn't know what to do with them, it's just better for you for actually hitting those units and hitting those situations. Obviously, if you ascend, which you usually do that in main, you're going to be able to do Gale 3 ramp off of Forest Golem. So again, just more utility for having the Nexus out and playing Gale units. Volcanic Canyon was one of the cards that did get limited recently in the updated ban that just started happening not too long ago this month. You draw 1 card, you discard a card during your draw phase. So it does help you rotate your deck, which is what this deck is pretty much about. Kleinetta, again, will pop your Nexus, draw you 2. This thing will help you filter to find other cards that you're looking for. And then if you're filtering maybe too much, you can swing Caldera, pop your own Nexus, get that draw to stop. And then it is a small little BP boost during your attack step. If you put 1 core on, your spirits will get an extra 1,000 BP. Doesn't hurt to have that. Our other big one that's going to help your reduction quite a bit in this deck list is going to be Volcanic Island. It is a 2-symbol Nexus. What does that mean when it turns into a spirit? Well, when you swing with Forest Golem and you turn all your Nexuses that have at least 1 core on them into a spirit, that now has 2 symbols. So you would be swinging for 2 symbols with Forest Golem, 2 symbols for each of your Volcanic Islands that you have in play. And then the cool part about Volcanic Island is that if it dies, so if you swing and they block with a bigger spirit and it dies as a result of that, when destroyed, you can place a core. I can't talk today. You can pay 1 core to place this card from the trash exhausted without paying its cost. So it's a constant reduction if you're able to have the cores in play, which again, as we talked about, if you're hitting your stuff like you're supposed to be, Hurricane Highlands, you've ramped enough cores, you can usually pay a core to sustain the thing and keep it alive, and then it would just stay on the board exhausted. Not bad. Very, very good. Especially in blue and red, Volcanic Island is a heaven send, especially for the second part, which is if it does see you discard something, you can give another unit Confront plus 3,000, so it's really nice. But mainly using it for the ability of keeping it alive, and then also swinging at your opponent for 2 symbols. Because again, whole point here is ramping a bunch, setting up for Forest Golem comes out to play, swing, animate all your Nexuses, and then just go to Pound Town. And that's what you're looking for. Next up are magics that keep us in the fight, or at least try to help us filter or sustain the board state. We've got 17 of those. We've got Strong Draw, very basic, very good card in blue. Draw 3, ditch 2, and it's a good BP boost of 3,000 if you need it in a pinch. 4 copies of Absolute Ice Shield. Again, if you've been watching a couple episodes of Sleeve This, you will see that this card is represented a lot in the deck builds. Absolute Ice Shield is just a very good defense tool. We're not really going to read it or go over it much. Again, if you ever want to look at these cards more in length, go check out bssdb.dev to start building your own deck list, and also check out community recommended builds that you are able to post, save, and post to a board, and you can check those out as well. Starblast Draw, just more draw. Nothing wrong with more draw, especially on the burst side of things. You can draw 2 during a burst window if the opponent resolves a Wind Summon effect, so it's really nice. Burning Force to help you maintain killing a Nexus that might be very good for your opponent. Again, if your opponent sees you play Hurricane Highlands, they're probably going to use this against you or something to that effect that can kill a Nexus. Also, this thing will also help you sustain early aggro. If people are swinging at you with low-hanging spirits, you obviously have an Octopus to kind of back you up if they're using magic cards as well, but this thing will also cleave 2 units with 3,000 fewer BP and destroy them, so it's really nice. Dream Bomb, just a good utility. Nothing wrong with sending a card back to hand. During the burst, if you lose life, you can send a Nexus back to hand. Dream Bomb, also a big staple that's going to be in a lot of the deck builds. And then another really good utility for cleaning up the board is Floodstream. When you lose life, treat one of your spirits as the highest cost during that effect. And then also, if you use it as flash in main, which is typically what it's used for, it's really not put in the burst all that much. Select any number of your opponent's spirits with a combined total of 5 or fewer and destroy them. Really good for cleaning up tokens. Tokens are a 0 cost, so you can just hit them all at once. Also good for cleaving something in particular that you can't reach. For example, Coven Kale, he's a cost 5, but his BP immediately usually sits at 8,000 if he's coming down when you or your opponent has a Hurricane Highlands, because you're ramping those cores and you're able to sustain out of most BP ranges. So hitting the cost of a unit that typically can't be manipulated is really good. So Floodstream is definitely in here as well. This has been Pile V2. And I'm gonna be honest with you guys, like looking at it, you're probably thinking of the same thing I am. How does this get off the ground? Why is this thing any good? It's got so many colors. Look, this is an episode of Sleeve This. This is not an episode of let's talk about why this isn't competitive or tier 0 or tier whatever deck. But funny enough, Marshall did use this deck and do really good with it. And I think it was live streamed too, actually pretty recently. So that video is probably floating out there somewhere. I don't know if it was this variation that he passed off to me, if it was a different one. But needless to say, if I'm talking about it on Sleeve This, I do think it's worth your time. I've already heard a couple of banters and side comments talking about, I want to see a deck list that hasn't been made before. I get it. Archetypes exist. Some decks function better with certain specifics. Yada, yada, yada. Rant, rant, rant. I want you guys to try new things. This is something I get feedback on too, is that I'm seeing the same deck list. I'm seeing the same way to play. I'm seeing all this other stuff. Seattle just finished, and the first place deck was mainly a mill deck. And like it didn't really swing or do anything else. And we'll probably talk about that deck list too at some point, just as like a little fun gimmicky side thing. But in the meantime, if you guys want to see those top deck lists or essentially what people were playing in Seattle, please check out the Main Deck Masters channel, which brought you all these recent episodes of Sleeve This. You can check out their channel down in the video description down below. You can also just click on the name, which should be hyperlinked in the title, and it'll take you straight on over. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace!